Karen banged on my front door just after midnight, shouting that my Christmas lights were blinding her. But when I responded by installing over 2,000 high-output LED lights across every inch of my property, fully synchronized with music that played nightly until 10 p.m., she learned the hard way that picking a fight over decorations with professional lighting designer only makes things exponentially brighter. My name is Nate, and I own Stellar Events Lighting, a company that specializes in professional lighting design for concerts, corporate events, and large-scale productions throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth area. For 14 years, I've worked hands-on with LED technology, programming complex light shows, and crafting visual experiences designed to command attention. I understand lumens, color temperature, synchronization software, and exactly how to build lighting displays that are spectacular while remaining fully compliant with local laws. What Karen didn't realize when she began complaining about my holiday setup was that she had just challenged someone whose entire career revolves around making things brighter, bolder, and impossible to ignore. I live in Meadow Creek, a subdivision built in 2015 in Plano, Texas. The homes are comfortable, middle-class properties with reasonably sized yards. The neighborhood has always welcomed holiday decorating, with families playfully competing each December to put together the most festive displays. There is an HOA, but it stays low-key. Basic maintenance, minimal interference, no unnecessary drama. 4 or 5 years straight, I decorated my house for Christmas using professional-grade lighting and displays. Neighbors loved it. Parents would walk by with their kids just to see the lights, and several families told me it had become part of their annual holiday tradition. My usual setup involved about 300 LED lights, animated projections across the front of the house, and a small musical element synchronized to a handful of classic Christmas songs. It was eye-catching but reasonable. Lights ran from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., and the music stayed at a conversational volume. Then Karen moved in directly across the street, about 6 months ago. She had golden blonde hair and made it clear almost immediately that she preferred a quiet, understated neighborhood. She didn't attend community events and mostly kept to herself. When I began putting up my Christmas lights in late November, I didn't think twice about it. Same display I'd used for 5 years. Same schedule. Same everything. 2 days after I finished installing and turned the lights on, Karen showed up at my door at 11:30 p.m., pounding aggressively. I answered in my pajamas. "Can I help you?" She snapped back that my lights were shining straight into her bedroom window, and she couldn't sleep. I told her the lights shut off at 10 p.m. every night, and had already been off for over an hour. She insisted they were still too bright when they were on, and claimed her entire house glowed from my display. I explained that I'd been running the same setup for 5 years without a single complaint. "Well, I'm complaining now," she said. "Either dim them significantly or take them down." I reminded her it was Christmas. Decorations were seasonal, and everything was within city ordinances. She said she didn't care, that they disturbed her. I told her I was sorry she felt that way, but I wasn't removing my decorations. She glared at me and accused me of being selfish and inconsiderate. "Good night, Karen," I said, and closed the door. The next evening at exactly 6 p.m., she was back, pounding again. This time, she recorded me with her phone when I answered. She complained that the lights were on and the music was too loud. Standing on my porch, I could barely hear the music myself. It was calibrated to be audible in my yard, not disruptive to neighbors. I explained that the volume was appropriate and within city noise limits. She argued she shouldn't hear anything inside her house. I told her that if she could hear it through closed windows, her hearing was unusually sensitive, because the decibel level was well below any complaint threshold. She threatened to call the police. I told her to go ahead. She did. Around 7:30 p.m., an officer arrived, spoke with me, measured sound levels from the street and from Karen's property line, and confirmed everything was legal. "Mr. Donovan, your display is fully compliant," he said. "The sound level is actually very reasonable." He explained the same to Karen and left. I assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next week, Karen filed 3 separate noise complaints, each dismissed. She filed an HOA complaint claiming my lights violated community standards, dismissed again because holiday decorations were explicitly allowed. She posted on the neighborhood Facebook page calling my house a cheap carnival. Most neighbors defended me and told her to relax. Then she crossed a line. One evening, I came home from a job site and found my entire light display shut down. Someone had unplugged the main power connection from the outdoor outlet on the side of my house facing Karen's property. I checked my security cameras. At 3 p.m., Karen had walked onto my property, located the power cord, and deliberately unplugged it. That wasn't complaining anymore. That was trespassing and tampering with my property. I immediately called the Plano police. I called the non-emergency police line and filed an official report. I provided the security footage clearly showing Karen walking onto my property and unplugging my equipment. An officer came out, reviewed the video, and then went across the street to speak with her. She admitted to unplugging the lights, claiming they were a safety hazard. The officer explained that safety determinations were not hers to make and that entering my property without permission constituted trespassing. He issued her a formal warning, but did not arrest her since it was a first offense and no permanent damage had occurred. After he left, I reconnected the power, but I also installed a locking weatherproof box over the outdoor outlet, so it couldn't be unplugged without a key. Karen was livid when she realized she no longer had access to the plug. The very next evening, she stormed over to my door angrier than I had ever seen her. She claimed I couldn't lock up a power outlet because it was a code violation. I calmly explained there was no regulation preventing me from securing my own electrical outlets on my own property, and that the lockbox didn't interfere with any safety systems. She shouted that my lights were ruining her enjoyment of her home. I told her that her constant harassment had been ruining mine, and that the lights were staying up until Christmas. As she turned to leave, she snapped, "I'll make sure you regret this," and walked away. That threat finalized my decision. If Karen wanted to complain about 300 lights, I would give her something truly worth complaining about. Over the following weekend, I brought in equipment from my company's warehouse, professional-grade LED strips, floodlights, projection mapping systems, and enough lighting gear to outfit a small concert venue. I covered every inch of my property: the roof line, the full house facade, every tree, the driveway, the walkway, the fence line, even the mailbox. LED strips traced every architectural feature. High-powered floodlights illuminated the yard. Projection mapping equipment transformed the walls into moving canvases. I increased the light count from 300 to more than 2,000 individual LED elements. Then I programmed a full light show synchronized to a dozen Christmas songs, cycling through patterns, colors, and animations. The programming alone took 6 hours, but the final result was breathtaking. A fully choreographed display that could rival a commercial installation. I installed professional outdoor speakers positioned to project sound evenly across my property without violating noise ordinances. I tested decibel levels repeatedly, making sure the music was enjoyable but remained below the city's legal limits. The grand reveal came on December 10th. At exactly 5 p.m., I powered up the full display. My house transformed into something straight out of Las Vegas. 2,000 LED lights pulsed in perfect synchronization to carol the bells. Colors cascaded across the roof. Animated projections of snowflakes, Santa, and reindeer danced across the walls. The entire property moved with light and music. Within 15 minutes, cars were stopping in the street. Families got out, recording videos. Kids danced on the sidewalk. Across the street, I saw Karen standing frozen in her driveway, mouth open, staring. The brightness of my display lit her entire front yard, and a reflected glow illuminated the whole street. She marched over immediately, her face red. "What have you done?" she demanded. I reminded her that she'd said my 300 lights were too much. If she was going to complain no matter what, I figured I might as well give her something spectacular to complain about. She called it insane, said it was like living across from a stadium. I told her everything was fully permitted. I'd checked every city code and HOA rule. Light shows were allowed until 10 p.m. The sound levels were legal. Every electrical connection met code. There was nothing she could do. She accused me of harassment. I told her this was holiday spirit. Her harassment had inspired my response. She filed complaints with everyone: the city, the HOA, the police, Every single one was dismissed because my display complied with all regulations. The city code enforcement officer who inspected it asked if he could bring his kids back later to see it. He told me it was the most professional holiday display he'd ever seen outside of a commercial installation. The neighborhood reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Within 3 days, my house became a local attraction. People from surrounding neighborhoods drove to Meadow Creek just to watch the show. On weekends, 50 to 70 people lined the sidewalk. Local news picked it up. A reporter did a segment on Plano's most spectacular holiday display, showing my house, interviewing neighbors, and mentioning it was programmed by a professional lighting designer. Karen's house appeared in multiple shots, glowing from reflected light. She tried everything to stop it, claiming traffic hazards, electrical interference, even eye health risks. Every claim was dismissed. 3 weeks into December, she listed her house for sale. The photos were taken during the day to avoid my display, but evening showings made it unavoidable. Reviews even mentioned the incredible Christmas lights across the street as a defining feature. Her house sat through Christmas and into January. She accepted a lower offer in February and moved out in March. A family with 3 young kids bought the house. The father introduced himself and asked if I'd be doing the display again next Christmas. He said his kids had watched the videos online dozens of times and that it helped sell them on the house. I smiled and told him absolutely. This past Christmas, I ran the full show again. 2,000 lights, synchronized music, the complete production. The neighborhood now treats it as an annual tradition. I keep Karen's complaint letters in a folder labeled Inspiration. Sometimes when someone says your lights are too bright, the right answer isn't to dim them. It's to add 2,000 more and put on a show.